I'm Edward Warfield, the publisher of Citybiz, and I'm honored today to interview Rebecca Murphy, who is a principal and owner of RCM Strategic Consulting. Welcome, Rebecca.
Hello, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Can you provide an introduction to the Upper Shore Community Development Partners?
Absolutely. It's USCDP, the Upper Shore Community Development Partners, is a community development corporation that is based in Chestertown, Maryland, that has a vision of everyone in our community having equal access to the tools that they need to have meaningful, productive lives. And what we mean by, and our mission really is to remove the barriers to access in the areas of community development, affordable housing, entrepreneurship, and affordable homeownership. Our theory of the case, so to speak, is that there's so many programs and there's so much work being done in each of those areas, yet we continue to have persistent racial disparities. So clearly it's not about the resources that are being deployed, but rather, in our view, about the way in which the resources are deployed. So we are very intentional about community engagement and about community involvement because we believe that the best way to know what the solutions are is to ask the community themselves. And so we see ourselves as providing that bridge, if you will, or that connection and partnership with between community and organizations in town in our subject areas. If that makes sense.
So can you explain what a community development corporation is? Let's go take a step backwards and really explain what the role of the community development corporation is.
Community development corporations are tools, basically, that they're nonprofit organizations that exist really to provide collaboration and partnership around solutions for and with community. It's a mechanism that is often used in cities. CDCs are often entities that are started by churches or, for-profit organizations in order to provide a vehicle to serve community, to raise money, to perform affordable housing. I think in Baltimore, many of the CDCs the church-based CDCs are formed in order to facilitate the development of housing. So CDCs are a mechanism to engage community, to address problems, to address community issues, such as predominantly affordable housing, but also community development and workforce development and, all of those other things.
And can you share the backgrounds of the other partners, Rebecca Flora and Sam Shog?
Sure. Sam Shogay is a Chestertown native and has a consulting practice in his own right. He is a former town councilman. He ran the Chamber of Commerce for a number of years. And he really is a thought partner, and he really helps us with our local relationships and providing us with a local perspective. And he's very talented. He's a very talented younger consultant. I really enjoy working with him. And Rebecca is also based in Chestertown, but did most of her work in Pittsburgh. And she is a consultant that does really the same sorts of work that I do around community development and housing and urban infill. And she's done a lot of work with smaller community organizations. She stood up a CDC in Pittsburgh. So we have very complementary skills, and it's been really wonderful working with both of them.
And what is the Upper Shore Disparity Dashboard? And can you explain the different phases related to it?
Sure. The Upper Shore Disparity Dashboard let me back up. One of the things that when we decided to start the CDC, one of the things that we realized is that there is a real absence of local level and county level data that is broken down by race, that's disaggregated by race. And certainly for both Rebecca and I, who have urban orientations where you can get data sliced and diced any way you want to, it was a little surprising that we couldn't get a handle on Black home ownership statistics, Black small business ownership statistics. We had no sense of what that universe was, and the data just isn't there. So while we hypothesize and we know based on national data and based some on county data what the disparities in income are, so we do have a theory of the case that we're pursuing, we don't have access to sort of the quantifiable data that really helps to inform the work, that really tells you how well you're doing. So we came up with this notion of a disparity dashboard wherein we will cooperate with the Eastern Shore GIS Collaborative, hopefully with Washington College and some others, to begin to put together data that is more local, that is more specific, that is more disaggregated. So again, we can understand effectively the scope and scale of the program, of the challenges we're dealing with, and we can develop solutions that are best tailored to that data.
So Dover, Delaware is one of your CDC samples. Can you highlight the financial and social impact of that CDC?
Well, I have not personally spoken with anybody at NCAL, but they are very effective. They are both a CDC and a CDFI. And the CDFI is a community development financing entity. So it's a loan fund, basically. They, have about a $5 million budget. They have a staff of about 40 people. I think they have 5 locations in Delaware. So they're much bigger than we are, but I would imagine they started in a very similar place. And we use them as a model because they do many of the same things that we do. They do homeownership counseling and financial education, and they are very engaged also in the real estate development space. So that is really what we have, most of what we have in common with them. But there are lots of really terrific CDCs that exist, not just in Delaware, on the lower shore, and certainly on the western shore. There are not as many, however, on the upper shore, which is part of why we felt the need to do this.
So the American Rescue Plan Act and Equity, can you explain it and what its impact on the Upper Shore community development partners will be?
I'll try. The American Rescue Plan Act, ARPA, which was a piece of legislation that the Biden-Harris administration championed that was ultimately passed, that is designed to really provide communities with the resources they need to remediate the inequities and disparities that existed before COVID, but that COVID really highlighted. So that's its purpose. And I think every jurisdiction in the country received an allocation of funding from the Rescue Act, Chestertown and Kent County being two jurisdictions. And our thesis when we started was that this, if you read the legislation and you read, kind of what it's supposed to do, community development corporations are a natural mechanism to do that work, especially in small communities where you don't have full-time government, you don't have, all of the services and the service areas that you might need to do the work that you want to do. So that was sort of our thinking from the outset, was that and it presented an opportunity for the town to invest in an organization without any impact on the town's bottom line, because ARPA funds are essentially found money for these communities. So whatever they use it for, there's no long-term budgetary impact, which is the other thing that made sense to us, because you don't ever want to incur, especially small communities, but communities generally are often very hesitant to incur what they believe to be ongoing expenses that they would then have to manage over time. And this was an opportunity, we felt, for them to not have to do that.
So can you share some of the collaborative relationships that are being formed to make this work?
Absolutely. We are really excited. We have a number of really terrific collaborations across our different issue areas. For example, in our job readiness, workforce development, we're really more about job readiness than about workforce development per se. We have a really wonderful partnership with Chesapeake College. which has been, we think, which is really wonderful. They have a number of non-credit programs in, different trades, different career paths. They have CDL training. They have all the construction trades. They have, CNA training. And then they also have credit programs in lots of different areas. So we are partnering with them right now on our minority entrepreneurship training program, which we are really excited about. We are requesting funds from a number of organizations to get that stood up. The college is going to work with us to help provide certification and to help sort of put together a package of courses or seminars that we can offer to our entrepreneurs. So that's a really exciting partnership. They are also, Chesapeake College, going to open an online branch here in Kent County. They're located in Talbot County, and one of the barriers to participation for people in Kent County is lack of access to transportation. So they're going to have a location that's about 10 minutes outside of the center of town, and we're hoping to work with them on not just course development, but also helping community outreach, letting people know that it's there, coming up with helping develop transportation solutions, and also providing the ancillary services that people need that are sometimes barriers, childcare, hot meals, and those sorts of things. So that's one partnership we're very excited about. And we have also started partnering with the Kent County Local Management Board, and they are very engaged in affordable housing. There's a housing task force that the local management board has developed amongst all of the different providers. There are several organizations in Chestertown that are engaged in affordable housing, but there is a lot of they're very siloed. They're not always really used to working together. And since partners is in our name, we're very focused on collaboration and partnership. So we're working with the local management board to try to effectuate those and facilitate those relationships.
So, what are the next steps for the Upper Shore Community Development Partners?
We are up to our eyeballs in next steps, actually. We are looking for, we are completing grant applications constantly. We are finishing up getting our 501c3 paperwork in order. We have a wonderful board that we're about to expand. We are working on numerous other partnerships. We have defining what those are. We're working with a whole host of organizations in the Chestertown, Kent County area, but we are in the process still of sort of quantifying what those partnerships look like. And we are really very engaged in community outreach. We want to let people know we're here and what it is that we do. And we are soliciting as much community input as we can. So we're trying to meet with other nonprofits, churches, other community leaders to get a sense, to make sure that we're on the right track, because we really see ourselves as not exactly a vessel, but we see ourselves as kind of a locus for community involvement and a mechanism to hold the larger community accountable around equity. Because I think there's a lot of good conversation around equity, but there's not as much action around equity as we would like to see. And, Chestertown and the Kent County community have a very vibrant and, Black and brown community that has a lot of potential, but those partnerships and relationships don't exist in the ways that they need to.
So, is there any part of the Upper Shore Community Development Partners story or any that you haven't shared with us? Or is there any insights or reflections that you'd like to share with us before we talk a little bit about your career?
Yeah, I think, although this sort of leads us, I think, into the discussion about my career. I have been a full-time Chestertown resident for 3 years and a part-time Chestertown resident for the previous 8 years. So, and I am a bloom where I'm planted kind of person. So I am very interested in contributing to my community. So I have spent many years doing outreach and really education around both community and economic development here in Chestertown. And in many ways, USCDP is the fruit of that labor. And it's really, so I'm really very excited about it. I really want people to start to understand it. I think singular challenge has been that, communities are communities are communities. And I think that I think our focus on equity can make some people uncomfortable, because I think it's easy to talk about equity. It's easy to, have commissions and hashtags and conversations, but actually doing the work of equity, which is different from diversity and different from inclusion, in that it really demands the sharing of power. That's a really tricky thing. And I think getting people comfortable with that and understanding the importance of that when communities are used to operating in a certain way has been and continues to be sort of our ongoing challenge.
So let's talk a little bit about your career. You started RCM Strategic Consulting back in 2001. Can you tell us about your vision on that and who some of your clients were?
Absolutely. I started RCM Strategic after the birth of my second child, my son. I had the great fortune before that to spend, I guess, 4 years, 5 years working at the Able Foundation, which was a really extraordinary experience. It doesn't seem like it was 30 years ago, but I think it was. It was a really extraordinary vantage point from which to return to my hometown. I was coming back after about 12 or 13 years away, and moved back home really because I think Baltimore is a wonderful place to raise your kids. And I wanted to be near family. So but I really always had a vision of how I wanted to live my life, first of all, and what kind of career I wanted, but also the kind of work I wanted to do. And when you grow up in a family like mine, where you have a real commitment to service and a commitment to community and a real commitment to community uplift, which I think was really my mother's gift, my work has always been about that. So my practice is very mission driven. It's very purpose driven. It's really about community empowerment and helping communities get the tools and learn how to use the tools that they need to be empowered to really be successful and to engage in the various partnerships and relationships that you need to in order to be successful. So government and philanthropy and nonprofit, I joke all the time that I'm really a connector and I'm really an interpreter because I've worked in all of those spaces. My mission really is to bring all those people together. I'm driven by collaboration and by a desire really to leave the world better than I found it. So that's kind of how I that's the history of my organization. And kind of over the last 20 years, I've had clients ranging from Able to the city of Baltimore to nonprofits up and down the East Coast. I have worked with some area nonprofits in Chestertown. I really, because I think that I just kind of go where the work is. I did a lot of diversity, equity, inclusion work with organizations, helping them kind of unpack that and understanding how to execute it. And that's really, so that's some of the work I've been doing. And for the last year or so, I have been very, very focused on US CDP. So they have been more or less my anchor client, if you will, and sort of trying to get that organization up and running, because I am somebody who likes to work on startups, who likes to do community organization, and then I kind of want to move on to the next thing. So because I have no real interest in ever again having a full-time job, for someone else. When you have two entrepreneurial parents, that's kind of what happens. So.
Well, Rebecca, I want to thank you for sharing your vision for your latest activity. And I think the DNA from both your parents is well served. Um, Keep us abreast as you take Chestertown to its next level of inclusion and empowerment and vision. So thank you for your time.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I really appreciated our conversation, and I hope to come back and see you sometime soon.